Hello and welcome to the Human Rights Commission, a regular meeting. Today's Monday, June the 9th, and it is a little bit over 5 o'clock, and I'm calling this meeting to order. We have achieved quorum, is that right, Jeremy?
That is correct.
Okay, so I'd like to move on to item number 3 and welcome everyone to today's meeting. But more especially, we would like to welcome our newest commissioner to the team.
Hello.
Welcome, Malachi Strong. We're so glad that you are going to be part of this commission, so congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Malachi, could you give us maybe just a brief intro about you, your background?
I'm Malachi Strong. I use he, they pronouns. I'm currently a master's of social work student at Capella University, and I graduate in September. And I also do, I'm a student intern for a local therapy office, primarily focusing on the LGBT community here. And I'm excited to be a part of this.
Well, we're very excited to have you with us, so welcome to this commission. And congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to move on to item number 4, which is the acceptance of the agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda as it stands in front of us?
I move to accept the agenda.
Yeah, Commissioner Rinkin moves. Do I have a second?
I second.
Remember to speak into the microphone.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Loomis. So we have a first and second. Any further discussion on the agenda? Let's take a vote to accept the agenda as it stands. Say hi, raise your hand. Malachi? Yes?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much. So it passes. Item number 5 in the agenda is presentations, and we have none. Is that correct, gentlemen?
That's correct. And as we're gonna move on to item 6 minutes, I wanna offer a change or revision. The very last item, adjournment. Commissioner Remus made a motion to adjourn. The minutes reflect April 14th, but it should be June 9th.
Correct.
With that, you can take a motion and.
Okay, a motion to accept minutes.
I make a motion.
So Commissioner Soria, a second. Commissioner Rinke, any further discussion? All right, let's take a vote. Say hi.
Aye.
Raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. We have the unanimous consent. And so now we're going to move into the meat of today's presentations, comments. We have public comments and we have several public comments. So you want to call?
I will call them because we have a specific order, and first we'll have the Abraham Eshak.
Okay. As a reminder to all of our commissioners, including you, Malachi, who are joining us for the first time, this time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Human Rights Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Although the commission values your comments, pursuant to Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed or posted in the agenda. You each will have 3 minutes assigned to make your public comments. Thank you so much. And remember to say your name for public record before you begin your comments. Welcome.
Abraham Ishak. Good evening, Commissioners. I want to begin by thanking Commissioner M.J. Horn for your courage in introducing this agenda item at the last meeting. Your leadership has directly resulted in the level of community participation we see here today, and I hope that feels meaningful. This is what public service is about. At the last meeting, Commissioner Horn, you said, we don't want to get into this political thing. I appreciate the intention behind that, and I'd like to respond directly. The topic we're addressing, the killing of children, isn't political, it's humanitarian. And I think we can all agree, the protection of innocent life should be a shared value, no matter our background or affiliation. But it's easy to see how that line between political and humanitarian can become blurred. Even right here in our own city. Councilmember Jeffrey Bernstein called the resolution supporting Israel humanitarian in nature. Yet that resolution supports a government actively carrying out military action that has resulted in the mass killing of civilians, including children. When I followed up and requested a ceasefire resolution, I was told that would be political, but that moment forced me to ask, how is asking for the violence to stop more political than endorsing it? would we be drawing those same lines if the Holocaust were happening today? Would we hesitate to speak because it felt too political? As the Human Rights Commission undertakes the important work of reestablishing itself, updating its agreed ordinance, and exploring how to be more effective, this is our opportunity to ensure that transformation is grounded in action. The ideas we will share aren't just theoretical, they're concrete, actionable steps that can and should be incorporated moving forward. I urge this commission to recommend that the city council assign a formal liaison to the Human Rights Commission, someone who can help facilitate communication and, more importantly, ensure that when this commission votes on initiatives or proposals, there is a clear pathway to place those items on the city council agenda for discussion. And if the council refuses to engage or act, they should be prepared to explain to the public why they are rejecting ideas fostered in good faith by a body created to protect human rights. The public will be watching and judging. It's time to hold our city council members accountable. No more smoke and mirrors. Human rights deserve more than rhetoric. They demand responsibility. Today, you'll be hearing from many members of our community, each with a unique perspective, but all united by a shared concern for human rights. We provided copies of each speech in the packet in front of you to help you follow along. We hope these voices will support your discussion and decision making today. And we trust that this commission, whose purpose is to uphold justice, dignity, and equity, will continue to be a space where hard truths are not ignored but engaged with compassion and clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Trust you.
All right, our next speaker will be Jane Dodd.
My name is Jane Dodd. Resident since 1987 or business owner or both. I'm here today to speak about the human rights of Palestinians and their family members and loved ones who live in Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley. My perception is that most city officials don't think their lives are as important as the lives of those who are committing a genocide, the ultimate human rights violation. Here's a short list of those who believe Israel is committing genocide: Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, UN Human Rights Council, International Court of Justice, University Network for Human Rights. These groups are much larger human rights commissions like yourselves, and they did not make this decision without doing their due diligence and research, unlike the Palm Springs City Council's emergency resolution of unconditional support for Israel. There are doctors, nurses, city employees, LGBTQ members, etc., who are of Palestinian descent in the Palm Springs area or have loved ones who have family in Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon. There are Palm Springs residents who have lost 90% of their family in Gaza or have family that's been displaced, living in tents with nothing. Often these Coachella Valley residents have no idea if their family members are living or dead. They must mourn and bear their pain in silence. Otherwise, they'll be labeled a terrorist or terrorist supporter. I can't imagine their anguish. But I do understand what it feels like to express sympathy or have empathy for them and be labeled an anti-Semite for doing so. We received a small taste of what life is like in Gaza with the car bombing. Luckily, there was only physical damage to buildings. On the same day, 158 humans, over half women and children, were murdered in Gaza by bombs and drone sniping. And you think that's not so important because it's happening over there and they don't look, dress, or pray the same way we do. Understand that what's being done to them is a training session for our future. If they can get away with it there, they can get away with it here, as our First Amendment rights are gradually disappearing in the name of safety and fighting terrorism. This is intentional, and Gaza is a testing ground. What's being done by ICE today is straight out of Israel's playbook and the IDF. Not only are the our First Amendment rights being destroyed, but also our Fourth Amendment rights, warrantless search and seizure. And they always start with groups who are the most defenseless and eventually work their way to you and me. We have attended countless city council meetings and asked them to rescind or amend their emergency resolution to include condemnation of Islamophobia to no avail. We have contacted the mayor when he spoke at a temple and was invited by a person who had very Islamophobic posts on his social media, which most have been taken down, but we have the screenshots as evidence. The mayor's only response was to contact the police. We had invited him to meet with us at our weekly vigils at Village Fest, which we've been having since last year, and he is aware of since he saw us there months ago.
Thank you.
That is why we're here today.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sierra Alvarez.
Hello, Mayor Alvarez. Good evening, commissioners. I want to speak today about a painful hypocrisy, one that many in our community have felt deeply this past year. It's the kind of double standard that makes itself known not just in policy, but in silence. Not just in words spoken, but in the ones deliberately left unsaid. We live in a city that prides itself on progressivism, a city of parades, proclamations, and social justice slogans. And yet, when it comes to one of the most urgent human rights crises of our time, the genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza, our so-called progressive leaders have largely fallen silent. Some have even chosen to amplify narratives that erase, that dehumanize, or that outright justify the suffering of millions. There's a term for this, PEP, Progressive Accept Palestine. It's the refusal to extend the same empathy and outrage to Palestinians that's shown to other oppressed groups. It's applauding human rights one day and turning away the next when those rights are denied to Arabs, Muslims, and Palestinians. But the truth doesn't go away just because it's uncomfortable. The world's top genocide and Holocaust scholars, including Jewish and Israeli scholars, have spoken in unison. What is happening in Gaza is a genocide. This isn't coming from fringe opinion or social media slogans. It's backed by evidence, history, and law. To ignore it is not neutrality, it's complicity. Palm Springs is not exempt from accountability. Our leaders, the ones who eagerly speak out for justice elsewhere, must be challenged when their advocacy becomes selective. Because when human rights become a buffet of choices based on politics or public perception, they cease to be human rights at all. The Arabs and Muslim communities here in the desert see it and they feel it. They are grieving and yet they're expected to stay silent, to not make anyone uncomfortable with the truth. But comfort was never the goal of justice. I ask this commission, where is their voice when theirs are being silenced? Where is their outrage when their families are being killed and raped? And most importantly, where is their commitment to the universality of human rights? Palm Springs can do better, and it must do better, because performative justice is not justice at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, our next speaker is Jake Bachman.
My name is Jake Bachman, and I am a resident of Palm Springs. Good evening, members of the Human Rights Commission and fellow Palm Springs residents. I'm here to address the alarming rise in Islamophobia and anti-Arab hatred in our community. Since October 7, 2023, national watchdogs like the Council on American Islamic Relations have reported a record-breaking surge in anti-Muslim incidents, the highest in 30 years, with this trend escalating significantly in California in 2024. This isn't a problem, it's personal and it's local. Here are just a few glaring examples of Islamophobia manifesting within our community. During the Hands Off protest earlier this year, a protest that was meant to combat hate, I was physically assaulted for wearing my keffiyeh, a symbol of Arab heritage, and screamed at for being a terrorist supporter. We have also seen a Palestinian family expelled from Palm Valley School after bringing Palestinian pins to a culture day. Their children punished for sharing their heritage. We see high-profile individuals, some who associate directly with city leadership, post vile anti-Arab racism online with zero accountability. And at our weekly vigils mourning tens of thousands of lives lost in Gaza, we face hostility for simply holding photos of deceased children. The double standard is glaring. It is deeply concerning that the Human Rights Commission's 2025 agenda, while addressing important issues, does not explicitly include Islamophobia or anti-Arab discrimination. This omission is not a neutral act. It is a form of silencing. It tells a vulnerable part of our community that their pain and their suffering are not a priority for this city. Just as you didn't blame the entire BLM movement for the actions of a few, you must not paint the movement for Palestinian liberation with a broad, violent stroke. Palm Springs prides itself on inclusivity, but I have to ask, what are the limits of that inclusivity? How can we claim to be a sanctuary where when our tax dollars are being may be contributing to what the world's highest court is investigating as a plausible genocide? How can we trust humanitarian reports on every other crisis but conveniently dismiss the ones from Palestine? And how can this city immediately condemn the violence of October 7th, yet remain silent and refuse to reconsider the unequivocal support for an extremist government committing war crimes? True safety for our Jewish neighbors is paramount, but it cannot be achieved while innocent Palestinians are being killed en masse. Because nobody is free until we are all free. This commission must do better. We demand that you explicitly add Islamophobia and anti-Arab discrimination to your agenda, condemn this hate unequivocally, and ensure Palm Springs is a safe and welcoming place for all of its residents and visitors. We ask you not to bury your head in the sand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mo El Abdallah.
Good evening, commissioners. Oh, Mo El Abdallah. Thank you for giving me this time and space. I'm here today to speak about a growing concern in our community, one rooted in intergroup tension, but more urgently in discrimination and dehumanization. Over the past year, many of us have witnessed the quiet mask of tolerance slip. What once were covert extremist views have started showing themselves more boldly, often cloaked in calls for safety or community values, but fueled by deep-seated Islamophobia and anti-Arab tropes. These aren't just words or opinions. These are tactics designed to dehumanize, to silence, and to marginalize entire communities. Let me be clear, people do not become threats simply by virtue of their faith, their heritage, or the language they speak at home. And yet fear is an easy currency. It is often traded when education is lacking, when empathy is replaced by propaganda, or when people are too overwhelmed to question what they've been told. But there's another truth. Education is our strongest weapon against hate, and it is not just personal opinion I'm standing on. It is peer-reviewed research, reports from international human rights organizations, the rulings of the world's highest courts, and the statements from the United Nations. What we know to be true is grounded in evidence and law and in a collective global pursuit of justice. I urge this commission to not let the hate that has surfaced in our city go unnoticed or unchallenged. Let us push for programming that builds understanding, not fear. Let us advocate for dialogue, not dog whistles. And above all, let us remember that protecting human rights means protecting all humans, especially those being dehumanized in plain sight. We deserve a Palm Springs that honors its diversity, not just with words, but with action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Cambria Blake.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kimber Blake, any pronouns is fine. Hello, commissioners. I just want to say thank you guys for the space to speak and for allowing us to have all these speeches. We've addressed the tensions, we've named the silence and the bias, but tonight I also want to offer hope and most importantly, solutions. If Palm Springs truly wants to be a leader in justice, we have to move beyond reformative statements and into meaningful action. Hate thrives in isolation. It thrives when people are reduced to headlines or hashtags instead of honored as neighbors, families, and cultures. The healing starts when we bring people together, not in debate, but in shared humanity. Let's begin by investing in cultural awareness events, evenings where people can learn about each other's histories, joys, struggles, and traditions. Let's go beyond tolerance and create space for celebration. Food and dance festivals, storytelling nights, and interfaith gatherings can go a long way in bridging unfamiliarity with connection. Let's host vigils for global human rights tragedies, not just the ones that are convenient to mourn. These moments allow us to come together in grief and solidarity, regardless of politics, to affirm every life has value. We can screen documentaries and films, educational media that amplify underrepresented voices, and spark real conversation. Partner with local schools, libraries, and theaters, center not just trauma, but resilience, not just conflict, but culture. We can start a monthly dialogue series, perhaps co-hosted by this commission, where local communities can speak with one another, not just about one another. Dialogue, when guided with compassion, is one of the most powerful tools against division. And most importantly, let's bring young people into these conversations. Hate is learned, and so is empathy. The people most affected by dehumanization are not asking for special treatment. We are asking to be seen, heard, and valued equally. The Human Rights Commission has a responsibility not just to respond to harm, but to actively cultivate belonging. Let's not wait for another tragedy to start building bridges. We can choose understanding, we can choose joy, and we can choose each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our final speaker is Nicole, but I couldn't make out the last name.
Good late afternoon, everybody. Nicole Cantor Daily. Hi, I didn't have much preparation for
Can you
this.
state your name for the record, please?
Nicole Cantor, P as in puppy, Daily, D as in dog.
Thank you.
I'm here to support these people here. I'm a Jew. I was raised in Palm Springs back when it was a tiny small town, and now I'm back. And I have to say and I lived in Israel for 2 years, 72, 73 during the war. I came back not at all interested in being a Zionist, realizing that Zionism and Judaism were two completely different things. One is an ideology of supremacy, God's chosen people. The other is a religion that teaches kindness, tolerance, universal human rights. My people are very torn about what's happening. It keeps me up at night. I invite any one of you to look at my Instagram feed, which I think is probably really different from yours. I've seen babies without heads. I've seen parents holding their babies' heads with no bodies. I've seen starving children. I've seen things that keep me up at night. And the thing that is most disturbing is that it's based on a lie that has been told, which is Zionism equals Judaism. It doesn't. So, in a sense, I'm being used as a human shield for this genocide. I'm being used to stop people from criticizing the things they're seeing in live stream. I love what Palm Springs has become. I was a child during the Section 14 thing and was very aware of that. And I love what we've evolved into here. And in order to really be an actual body with credibility, we can't shy away from things like the genocide that we all know is going on. Please address it. I found out late in the game that Palm Springs, I don't think they'd moved back here yet, when they had the city council made that proclamation, which I understand was done in the heat of the moment and a lot of propaganda. We need to counter that statement because there are people who live in this town like Abraham and Muhammad who don't feel comfortable and loved and seen here. And it starts with you guys. It's hard work and it's not comfortable, but please, I beg you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Any other public commentary?
No.
Okay. So thank you again for public commentary. We're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda, which is new business. And we're gonna start with K8, which is the draft presentation, the joint meeting with City Council. As you all remember, and those of you who are new, this is the first time you're gonna join us for this presentation. But each board and each commission is invited to a joint meeting with the council at Convention Center. And we're asked to put together basically 4 slides. And they give each of our boards and commission 5 minutes to produce and present an update of what the commission or the board has been working on. We were basically given even the template for the slides. And as part of your packet, you have the 4 slides. And what I'm asking commissioners to talk about is it's the 4 slides.
Did you get the agenda package?
I have the digital one.
Yeah, about that. What I'm asking commissioners to talk about is the appropriateness of the content of the slides. Again, it's 5 minutes. We have to provide a very quick update. We have not a whole lot of time to address city council. One of the requirements from city was to put our comments on those slides, focusing on their strategic plans for 2025. And that document is available on the city website, but we can also make sure that you all get, it's one PDF. So with that mandate, Jeremy and I kind of took a stab at creating the content for these slides, and I will welcome anyone's comments and feedback, and I know Commissioner Mignolo had a few comments and suggestions. And this was done before our newest commissioner, Malachi Strong, was appointed. So you're gonna see on slide number 2 or 3. Number 2. Yeah, you're gonna see a member name. So that we know now, it's gonna be Commissioner Malachi Strong. But I don't know if any commissioner has any specific comments or like that. Yes, Commissioner Ringe.
I do. Social equity, that's kind of a nebulous term. What does that mean? I'm not familiar with us even using it within the context of what we do. So I was just asking for an elaboration or understanding.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
So these 4 terms on that slide are what council came up with as their overarching goals for the next calendar and I guess the next fiscal year. So these aren't necessarily human rights commission goals. These are of the council. And what they've asked this commission to do is take their goals and make sure they match up with one of the city council goals. So what you see later on is what Hugo has presented as the goals for this body, but they need to somehow tie into the overarching city council goals, which include social equity, public safety and community service, housing and inclusivity, and civic engagement. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
It just provided us some kind of a framework to come up with the content of the slides. And, for example, for social equity, as you all know, we have started a series of conversations with local, state, and national organizations that are coming to give us presentations. So we didn't have a name for that kind of dialogue series, and something that was very simple for us to think about was citywide equity and belonging dialogue series. And we will continue to have these kinds of conversations with these organizations as we move along. But again, it's just, this is what I think we can kind of frame with regard to why are we inviting, the AP, or why are we having the folks from California Equality, and so on and so forth. So what you see is it's an attempt to talk about how we could frame the work of this commission based on the council's strategic goal and framework.
I'm a little confused. Okay, I was very moved that you came and explained to us your situation. Are we to address this at the next agenda meeting, or I don't know how to do this?
Commissioner Horn, if you look at the agenda, again,
Yes.
real quick. Item 8B is a discussion regarding the intergroup tensions.
Yeah.
That's what we get a chance to talk about.
Oh, okay, so I see. You're in the
agendized.
draft presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Sorry.
We're following the agenda.
Okay.
Now, I may make one comment here. This presentation is really a guiding document. You don't have to feel you're locked into this. So as we evolve over the next year, things change, that's perfectly acceptable. This is just something to get in front of the public and the council that, hey, here's where we're currently focused, but that could certainly evolve over time.
Yeah, I guess I'll restate my comment. I see it in the strategic plan, but it's still a little bit fuzzy in my mind, and we can just register that comment and not have it.
Okay. Any additional comments from commissioners?
From what I see here, all of these are put together very well. They cover everything we need to cover. And Jeremy's explanation that these are guidelines that we can go by and possibly add to them or delete from them. I think it's a go.
Mhm.
But there's an
Commissioner Reese?
implication of what our actions should be, or what do they mean for us as a commission? So that's what I'm trying to grapple with, the bridge between the overarching title and what we need to be doing.
Mhm. Commissioner Reynolds, what are your thoughts?
I like everything except where it says economic development, where it says support initiatives to reduce workplace discrimination. Shouldn't there also be workplace discrimination and housing? Just add housing and housing.
And housing?
Yeah.
That's a simple,
Now, I had a question about that as well, is like, what does that imply for the commission to do? Supporting initiatives to reduce workplace discrimination. We don't really interface with the business community so strongly, maybe handling complaints from the community.
Mhm.
But again, a little clarity around that, or what do other people think that means? What does it imply for us to act? I'm looking for action.
Mm. First thing that comes to mind is that we are all empowered to be out there in the community, engaging with various organizations. And for example, you've done a great deal of work with homelessness and the police department.
Right, but it's not workplace discrimination.
So workplace discrimination would be any situation where someone was denied a position or a job because based on gender or race or ability to perform the job. And those could be generally, submitted by people that feel like they've been discriminated against.
I mean, to chime in here and remind the group that the city council asked that this body not take on complaints. So perhaps the avenue that we could take is an educational role in designing educational materials to prevent workplace discrimination. Maybe it's more of that path
Mm.
and not receiving or mediating complaints. I think we're moving away from that direction.
That makes sense. You want to-
Yeah, Scott?
I was gonna say that it was something we could develop like some sort of pamphlet, but then I'm thinking, is that gonna live on our webpage, that it's accessible digitally? Do they have to come here to a meeting? I think that's something we could figure out moving forward, is what's the easiest way to make that accessible to all people in the community?
Any additional comments?
um, Oh, I gave this some thought, public safety community service. Advocate for programs supporting seniors, LGBTQ youth, and other vulnerable groups through policy recommendations. I think up higher, I was concerned that with what's going on, in the government and ICE, do we want to say anything or highlight immigration status is one of the discrimination categories that comes further in the municipal code. But that was something that's really, it's a bombshell on us. How would that be incorporated on our 2025 initiatives, or should it?
What are your thoughts?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. Go ahead.
I have a question to piggyback on that. Like, if we do provide, say, what you see right now being shared a lot is your rights when ICE knocks on your door, or what to do, you don't answer them, they are not police, are we, as a subsidiary of the government body of Palm Springs, allowed to share that kind of information formally? If that was an avenue we pursued, are we legally allowed to do that, or are we violating some sort of rules or laws there?
So I am not an attorney, but what I can do is get a response back from this city attorney and send it to all of our commissioners. So we know that's an avenue that we can start going.
Mhm. We always have to kind of bring it back to what is the mission of the commission, right? And part of it is education. So when we think about the dissemination of information that's available to the public.
Yeah.
Well, depending on what the city attorney says, that maybe we can talk about or educate the community regarding immigration rights. If that's okay with the signature. And if that's the case, then maybe if there's time, then slip it in the PowerPoint slide.
I really agree with that approach. I mean, I think everybody here has first degree contacts with undocumented workers here in Palm Springs. So it worries me how what's going on can touch this particular community.
I'd also like to state on the first slide that's here, it says we serve as an advisory body to the city council. And I think that's a clarity that I'm glad is in here because we don't make rules. We advise the city council on what we've discussed. So I think that's a good clarity.
Jeremy, can you make sure that the city attorney has that question in front of him this week, if possible, about educating the public regarding immigration rights status?
I'll reach out to him at the conclusion of this.
Thank you.
So I particularly like, this line that says, seniors, LGBTQ, youth, and other vulnerable groups. Can we identify vulnerable groups? I mean, we know what a vulnerable group is. But do we have a sort of a guide for vulnerable groups and what they are? I don't know, like.
If we can get permission from the city attorney to put all the California protected classes in this category and put them in the slide, that'd be great.
Could we have like yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, what are the city attorney knows the legal protected classes in California. It'd be great if they're all referenced in here. It might be too wordy, but at the end of the day, I'll defer to the chair.
And also, is that available online?
Yeah, you could easily find it.
Right.
But the question is, will we have the blessing of the city attorney?
Okay.
You could easily find them, but. So I guess you have 2 items for the city attorney.
I'll certainly follow up, and I'm not leading the meeting, but I just want to remind the group that we do have one of our members online. Let's make sure that we reach out to Malachi, acknowledge him, and ask if he has any input as well.
Right, Commissioner Strong, do you have any thoughts on this?
I really like the idea of education because I think a lot of the conversations that I had just with various peoples before my appointment was just not knowing what a lot of those resources were and what we could do. And so I think if we do have the permission to make it more educational, we can even think about adding that to a part of the series and maybe having someone come talk about those things and then putting them in a place that is easily accessible. And I think having it both like on the website and people could come in just from accessibility standpoint, because I know for myself, like I use a wheelchair. And so getting around and those sort of things can be hard. And so if you have resources in various places, it makes it easier to be reached by various people.
Thank you, Commissioner Strong.
Yes.
Very well said. Okay, so this is a work in progress and we are asked to make this presentation on the 17th. So not a whole lot of time to make significant edits, but definitely we'll see what we can accommodate. Again, the presentation is only very brief. And it's basically highlights. And it's a work in progress. Right? Okay? Yes, excellent. All right, so with that, I don't think we need to take a vote on this item. And we've had a discussion, so we're gonna move on to the next item in the agenda, which is a discussion on regarding the intergroup tensions. And again, thank you to all the public testimony people provided. And I'm gonna open it up to perhaps Commissioner Forms, as you made the motion to include this in the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I like the intergroup.
Please speak into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Intergroup tensions, okay. Who came up with that term? I mean, how did this evolve? Was it because we were gonna discuss issues brought to the commission, like the present parties, or Is this just this just general identifying intergroup tensions? I'm not sure how we're approaching that.
At our last commission meeting, you had brought up the idea of having a discussion following Abraham's comments. This commission had previously received a memo from the city attorney that the commission is not to take up international relations. So in checking with the chair, we came up with a term that was a little bit more broad that would allow you to have a very similar conversation that brought it into the confines of the city of Palm Springs.
Okay, so, all right, so intergroup tensions. Well, there is an intergroup tension between Palestinians and and the Jewish groups or what do you call them? But anyway, so do we discuss that? Do we try to identify how we can recommend to council that, we've heard very compelling arguments today. How do we synthesize this into identifying intergroup tensions? Does that make sense?
I don't want to dominate the meeting or step on your toes. And I can't tell you what to discuss, but I can tell you, I think you're in a good spot if you can have the conversation and how it impacts residents of Palm Springs.
So most of the people that are here today are residents of Palm Springs. So we address their issues. Do we then discuss, what were the two, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. What were the people who live in Israel are Zionists, right? And okay, I've never been to Israel. I'm very sympathetic to both sides. I mean, I do think there's genocide. And I think that I'm glad that all these people brought it up. Okay, so what I might suggest is, do we want to try to identify intergroup tensions? Because, it could be gay, it could be, I don't know, Jews, it could be, I mean, we have all these, I want to say minorities that we need to address their human rights. So do we try to identify intergroup tensions? Is that a good way to approach this? By saying there's these issues, and bring them to the commission and discuss them. Is that a good?
Perhaps a quick reading of the memo that came from the city attorney may help us clarify that point a little bit. Because it's based specifically on what we have in the ordinance and how we need to kind of follow those guidelines. Last year, this obviously is not new and it's been bubbling up for quite some time. Last year, we received a memo from the city attorney's office, Jeff Ballinger, and it was back in May of 2024. And the memo which you have on your packet, the subject was scope of Human Rights Commission authority.
The memo is not in the packet, it was previously.
Okay, so it's about scope of Human Rights Commission authority, and so I'm gonna read it for public record. I think that's appropriate. And the memo starts with, I understand Vice Chair Vignolo has requested or plans on requesting the commission to host one or more community conversations about the dangers of Islamophobic rhetoric, increasing acts of anti-Semitism and anti-Palestine hate. The ordinance that establishes the Human Rights Commission provides in part, this chapter applies to all discriminatory practices and resulting intergroup tensions as specifically covered by the provisions of this chapter, occurring within the territorial limits of the city or within any governmental agency or any other agency under the jurisdiction of the city. This is part of Palm Springs Municipal Code, section 2.45020, and the ordinance 1426, section 2, 1992. And then it goes to say Islamophobic rhetoric, increasing acts of anti-Semitism and anti-Palestinian hate are matters that many are concerned about across the world and in our own nation. However, the ordinance's language quoted above limits the Commission's role to those practices and tensions occurring within the territorial limits of the city of Palm Springs. The Commission's authority does not extend to practices and tensions occurring in the Middle East or on campuses across the nation. I advised Commissioner Vignolo on this municipal code provision and wanted to highlight to the entire commission, as you said, about your duties as commissioners. And that's the end of the memo from
Okay,
our city attorney.
but we have members of our community that have come in today to express some frustration that their personal beliefs are not being addressed. And we can't do anything about, I mean, we're only at the pleasure of the council. But how do we address what these people have said in order to make a recommendation to council to so the council could.
Okay, I can interject here.
Yeah,
I know the first speaker, Abraham Ishak, had recommended a liaison, a formal liaison to the Human Rights Commission to facilitate communication with the city council. So a Human Rights Commission liaison with this community, discussing what their issues are and helping them bring forward their ideas or their desires to the city council. That could be one action that we could implement.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that they want to be listened to. And they feel that they haven't. So how do we navigate their concerns, which is, let's set aside the international situation, which is horrible and all that, but our residents, which are the people who've come in to make comments, feel that they are not being listened to. That's what I'm hearing. I might be incorrect, but that's what I'm hearing. So can we make a recommendation to council that, I mean, I'm not sure how to word it, but can we say, these are our residents and they do have concerns that they're not being listened to. They're bringing up subjects that are newsworthy, I want to say. But instead of getting into a negative part of, let's say, clashing cultures, or I want to address the people that came in and they feel like they've been sort of left out. Is there anything that we can do to listen? Well, we listened to them, and then the question is, how do we, as a vehicle, make a recommendation to council on what we've heard today? Or can we? I don't know. What do you think? I don't.
So I wrote something down because I've been traveling since 4 a.m. and I didn't want to get this wrong because it's very important. I think one of the hardest parts about being on this commission for me is having to leave my personal opinions at the front door, right out there. And also having to work within the very tight confines of what we are allowed to do. So this is what I wrote down, just I wanted to get it all in one place. I wanted to start by acknowledging that this is a deeply emotional issue for many people in our community. There is real pain and concern on all sides, and that deserves to be recognized and heard. But as members of the Human Rights Commission, our role is to focus on human rights here in Palm Springs. We are not equipped or mandated to weigh in on international conflicts. That's simply not our job. We were consulted on the original proclamation, and any decision about revising it has been left up to the City Council and not this commission. Now, what is within our scope is making sure that Palm Springs remains a place where everyone feels safe valued and respected, no matter their background, religion, or political views. That means standing firmly against any hate or harassment that shows up here at home. People are hurting, and that matters, but our job is to protect each other here, in Palm Springs. When cities like Portland tried to take sides in global conflicts, it tore the community apart. We're here to bring people together. That is part of our mission, not divide them. People can have different views on global issues, but what matters most in this room is how we treat one another as neighbors. Our focus is local, our responsibility is local, and that's where we can make the biggest impact.
Okay, I understand that. And thank you for that. But the question is, for me, is that we have residents that feel that they're not being listened to. So isn't it our role to listen? And perhaps, I don't know, because we don't want to get into the international situation, but they feel that they're just not being addressed, and they feel selectively pushed aside. And I think it's our mission to be able to recommend to council that say that we've listened and we think the council should listen too. That's sort of my perspective.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Just quick question on that, just playing devil's advocate, wouldn't the council say that's why we have public comments? That's what I assume they would say, like if I brought that to them, or you brought that, wouldn't they say?
Okay, so I agree, and I'm sure that some of the individuals have gone to council and expressed, but they have brought it to us now. And isn't it our obligation to listen? And
Which we have.
I'm concerned because they don't feel like that we're addressing their issues without going into the international aspect, because we understand,
Right.
You know, anyway, so I'm thinking, can we recommend to council that they listen more? Like we have to pass this along, don't we? Or no?
So the vehicle, Commissioner Horn, is we have public testimony, which is part now of public records, right? And so the entire city council reads these, right?
I hope so.
That's an important part of it. So we're technically speaking, we're passing the public's comments.
Right.
In the memo that Mr. Ishak shared with us on May the 12th, he made some very specific ideas. He shared some specific ideas that they wanted to propose. And these three ideas, I think, have a lot of merits. You know, a candlelight vigil, similar to the one held annually for Trans Day of Remembrance. Film screenings are community discussions to foster understanding, as the upcoming No Other Land screening and panel discussion happening on May the 24th. That's obviously passed. And any other creative ideas this commission may envision. So I think that to answer your question, this information gets to council. We could, in conversations with council members, we can say, this is important, help us. Establishing a relationship with a liaison, I think that has a lot of merits. I believe so.
So you mentioned, we mentioned education.
Yeah.
Is there a way to recommend to council that, for example, put on not a pro-Palestinian, but say at the cultural center, you do photographs of the plight of genocide, and you make it a public, so people can understand. I know we see the images on TV and we see it on our feeds and all that, but why not make it a cultural thing and try to have people see more in a museum type environment or a cultural environment?
I have two comments.
Okay.
No Other Land was a film screening that did just that.
Yes.
I mean, that was.
That was one day.
Yes.
And I missed it. And I think that it should play more because I missed it, and it's very important film, as I understand it.
But my other comment, though, is taking this from the international scene. These people are feeling marginalized and they're feeling silenced. And as human rights commissioners, it's in our scope, as I see it, to help them find a voice for who they are, not feeling silenced or ashamed, are fearful about being pro-Palestinian or being Palestinian heritage. I think that's one of the protected classes, your national origin. And so how do we propagate their, I want to say, integration into the community in ways that, you know, don't violate city municipal code?
Right, okay. Well, I don't know how to do that.
If I may comment, I recently also attended the movie recently at the Palm Springs Cultural Center on the Palestinian family that was living on the Gaza Strip. It was quite moving. The theater was packed. The attendance, I wondered beforehand how many people actually show up, but there was not an empty seat in the auditorium. If we can get more things like that to explain and show visually what's going on, I think that would be a step forward.
Can we work with the what is it, the art commission? Is there an art commission here in the city? Isn't there a cultural arts commission?
No, that's public arts.
Oh,
You're talking about public arts?
yeah, well.
The sculptures and the art on the streets?
Yeah, okay,
That's
so
not- That's not the
can
avenue.
we work with them to put on a comprehensive visual, we can screen that movie, not one day, but a week or something. With I'm just thinking it out of my head, photographs, paintings, whatever, in a cultural way to have us acquainted with what they're asking for, which is they want to be seen. Right?
Does anyone in this commission knows how those screenings were organized? Who worked with the cultural center to have those screenings? Because I don't have contact with.
They announced it. I don't recall. I think it was the Jewish rabbi from Temple Isaiah and someone else, a woman of Palestinian heritage, who really engineered having the showing at the cultural center. He's a powerful speaker as well.
So can we, you said a liaison, we should create a liaison, we could create a task force to, I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Perhaps it would be helpful if someone, perhaps you, Chair, could read Vice Chair Vignolo's comment that he has provided on this item. It would be a kind of a one-page double-sided document.
Yeah.
If you look at the bottom of page 1, agenda item AP, discussion regarding, there's one little paragraph here, maybe if you want to read.
I want to read that for the public.
It gives a recommendation that might answer your questions, Mr. Orr.
Okay, so Commissioner Vignolo's comment is, I would really like to see us take the lead on bringing diverse groups together from the community to respectfully have a dialogue conversation about what has clearly been ongoing and contentious issues in our community. These are only being now exacerbated by the ongoing tensions and anxiety of the current state of affairs at the national level and with many of the current administration's policies. The HRC could facilitate a series of listening sessions with members of the faith community, LGBTQIA+, immigrant, businesses, and many others. Can we simply agree to create an ad hoc subcommittee of 2 commissioners to put together a draft proposal and bring it back to the commission at its September regular meeting? I'm happy to be a part of that subcommittee. I did get lots of ideas from the recent Human Rights Conference I recently attended as part of World Pride in Washington, D.C. So I don't see why that couldn't be done. No, that's a comment.
That is a viable option.
That's a viable option.
If I may say, the movie that was at the Cultural Center recently, the United Methodist Church in Palm Springs was also involved in putting that together. So I believe between them and the rabbi from the Temple Isaiah, I think they were catalysts behind it. We might see what they can do to further, address these.
I'm also curious because there are rabbis here. Are there imams or leaders of the Muslim faith here? Or is there a, I want to say church, but I don't think it's a mosque or something. Is there that here or?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so it'd be interesting to know. I have no idea, so.
This would be kind of an interfaith dialogue.
Interfaith. Okay. I'd be happy to work with David, and see what we come up with. I don't know if somebody else wants to do it.
Commissioner Remus?
I think maybe we might want to entertain the suggestion about the liaison to city
Yeah.
council sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
because David's talking about September. Right, so maybe we can appoint a liaison today, if it's okay. So is it viable?
You can't make a motion today because we have nothing to vote on, but what you can do is make a recommendation that I can present to the council. So we can get consensus of this body. I could put together a staff report that I could present to the city council.
Mhm.
Or you could perhaps take Vice Chair Vignolo's approach of putting together a small ad hoc committee that makes more formal recommendations. It could move fast to present at the July meeting. It doesn't need to wait until September.
Well, if it goes forward for July, that'd be great.
I'm not in control of it, it would be controlled
Yeah,
by.
but I'd rather.
Of course.
Ad hoc committee is appointed.
Yeah, that will be
So
definitely
point of
above
clarification,
our.
would it be David, the liaison?
So David is already saying that he'd like to be part of that subcommittee. That's what he's saying in his comments. And, you know, if you want to join him on that, that'd be fine.
Would like to be considered.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe you can bring this to council in a way that the plan is to.
This won't need council approval. This body can appoint an ad hoc committee. It would not be governed by the Brown Act. So we could take Commissioner Rinke, Vice Chair Vignolo. They can meet on their terms at their time to come up with a plan that can present it back to this body to then make a subsequent recommendation to the city council.
Okay, and because of Brown Act, there can only be 2 commissioners. Right,
That's
Jay,
right.
would you-
correct?
Yeah,
would you like part of it?
And
So-
if I may, to clarify, so we've established that we cannot address the international crises, but we can address how it's affecting our residents.
100% correct.
Yes, that. Great, so it looks like that would be definitely viable.
So as staff liaison, what I will do is I will reach out to Vice Chair Vignolo, you Commissioner Rinke, and I can schedule some time that we can get together and talk about parameters of how this could work. And then I will leave it up to the 2 of you to schedule times and come up with a plan that you can bring back. And it sounds like what I'm hearing is that the commission would like something brought back to the July meeting so we could act sooner than later.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes,
yes, right, Commissioner Strong?
yes.
Perfect. Great. So we're gonna do that, please. Moving on to the next agenda
Before we
item,
move on, can I run for a quick personal break?
please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to take a look.
We're doing actually very good time.
Off.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it wants to be a bit.
So Mr. Stop, where did you get your shirt? I just noticed that. It's really nice.
I got this at Express. I was like running around somewhere. I was on vacation. I was like, I just need a short sleeve.
We're in LA, Beverly Center.
I don't remember where it was. I just remember it was on sale and it was cheap. And I was like, great. And it fit nice. And it's like a nice material. And
It
there's
looks
stuff hot
really
in there.
cool, especially in this heat.
That was my thought.
Scott, your remarks were very good.
Oh, thank you. I was like, let me write them down since I'm working on 3 hours of sleep.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
I'm glad you could make it today.
Of course.
I think we've established our perimeter. And that's,
Yeah, I think that's
I
just.
think that was the important thing to establish.
Yeah, my Catholic bishop here, Middle Eastern.
And remember, a lot of this stuff is definitely above our pay grade.
Mhm.
Yes,
So-
exactly, yes. You are correct.
Right?
Malachi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just wrapping up school this week. So that's
Nice.
Malika, you doing anything fun for summer?
I'm just looking forward to sleep. I don't feel like I get any sleep with everything going on, but I love what I do, so that helps.
Good for you.
We welcome you to this group. You're a nice addition.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We've been waiting for Jeremy. We're gonna continue.
Do you want to be? Yeah. Okay, I'll see you. Yeah, you were the best.
You are, oh, good, okay.
But you should.
I really.
Yes. It's a beautiful town.
As I remember when I was a kid.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh yeah, you were there when you were a kid. That's right.
I think the liaison is, they recommended and you pursued is a very good recommendation.
We're good to go?
It's a start. It's-
Yeah.
It's to let the council know that there's more to this, than what's going on. So-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
You.
No, that.
Is it still recording?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're gonna continue with the agenda item 9A, which is the update of the revision to the municipal code. And we're very happy to be joined today by the Office of the City Clerk. Thank you, Brenda, for being here. As well as the Office of our City Attorney, Jed Ballinger. You're welcome to join us before we start this discussion. So thank you very much. And again, for public, if you could just introduce yourselves. Speaking to the microphone, please.
Christine, check it out.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Brenda, for being with us today. So the discussion item 9A is a revision to the municipal code. And what we were asked to do was to think about based on the red line of the revisions that we have worked on thus far, was to try to simplify the language in the domestic partnership sections 2.45070 and 2.45080. And the intention was to preserve its intent in planning for future application and hope to have a streamlined version. I did prepare a few comments about that, but I would like to first open it to any commissioner who would like to provide.
Perhaps it would be helpful to hear from the attorney representing the city attorney's office. She's done some research to give a little bit of history about sort of how domestic partnerships have evolved, what's different between state law and our ordinance, and that might help sort of guide or instruct our
Wonderful.
discussion.
Okay, thank you for having me, commissioners. Again, Christine Chacon from Best and Krieger. I'm a local trust and estates attorney. We have an office here in Indian Wells where I practice. So what I was just going to do was sort of provide just a real brief background of sort of the legal rights and effects of the existing ordinance. And then of the family code. The California Family Code is where you find the registered domestic partnership laws. And basically how they interact with each other. I think there's an important code section that you all will want to be aware of as you work through this project together. So the city ordinance states that domestic partners are two adults who have chosen to share in one another's lives in an intimate and committed relationship of mutual caring, and refers to those who have registered as domestic partners
pursuant to a valid and current statement of domestic partnership on file with the city of Palm Springs. So what I took a look at is, as it stands, what rights do those who have registered have under the city ordinance? The ordinance is very clear that it does not change the character of property. You're not giving each other community property rights. You're not giving survivorship rights and assets. It does not change tax liability or filing status. It does provide healthcare facility visitation, meaning all healthcare and psychiatric care facilities located in Palm Springs, hospitals, long-term care, convalescent. They're required to allow a domestic partner visitation, patient visitation rights, jail visitation, which of course is not applicable. And then city application, licensing, and permitting, essentially the same filing rights afforded to spouses. To register, you must be 18 or over, not married, not related to each other, not a party to another registered domestic partnership. And both persons are agreeing to be jointly responsible for their common care and welfare, competent to contract, must be domiciled in the city of Palm Springs, and cohabitating for 6 months or more. So that's a summary of the current ordinance. Now, in comparison, the code in our California state law is California Family Code Section 297. It defines domestic partners as two adults who have chosen to share one another's lives in an intimate and committed relationship of mutual caring. The legal rights provided by Code 297 are much more expansive. It's providing the rights, responsibilities, and obligations afforded to spouses. Non-discrimination rights, public agencies may not discriminate. It does provide community property rights, survivorship rights, parental rights, and mutual responsibility for debts. So it is providing those same rights that you have as spouses as to property. Similar requirements for registering. You must file with the Secretary of State, be 18 or over, not married, not related to each other, and not a party to another registered domestic partnership. So how do these interact? There is a code section, Family Code 299.6. It states that it preempts any local ordinance that provides for the creation of a domestic partnership shall be preempted on and after July 1st, 2000. State law. So what does our state law provide? Does it provide what the city ordinance currently provides? Those rights I just went through. State law does permit financial powers of attorney and healthcare directives. That is something notated in the city ordinance that is provided by state law. State law does permit hospital visitation to spouses, registered domestic partners, children, parents, grandparents. So in other words, hospital visitation is also provided by state law. State law provides the same rights to registered domestic partners as spouses have under all laws, meaning administrative laws, government policies, regulations. What I'm getting at here is the ability to, have permitting and licensing rights, as we just reviewed under the state or under the city ordinance. So the state law does provide for everything that the ordinance currently provides. And of course, more in the definition of what registered domestic partnership allows under state law. So in looking at this, what I think is important to know is that it states that the preemption is on and after July 1st, 2000. The city ordinance went into effect, my understanding is January 5th, 2000. So there would be about 6 months of registrants that would have a recognized registered domestic partnership in the city based on how those dates align. But after that July date, our law is very clearly preempting, but it permits, this is where it gets a little tricky, it permits for city ordinances. It states that a city, so let's say Palm Springs here, may retain an ordinance that offers rights as defined by California Code 297, this code that I just reviewed. Or the city may more broadly define the rights. So you can provide the Family Code 297 rights and more. Or you may impose duties on third parties regarding registered domestic partnerships as defined in the Family Code 297 or as more broadly defined locally. So that code is going to be very key to your analysis, is understanding this code 299.6. And then I just also wanted to point out for the city while reviewing all of this, we also in the California Family Code have section 299.2 that recognizes registered domestic partnerships validly formed in other jurisdictions. So important to know, let's say you've moved here from out of state, as many of our retirees do, and they're registered domestic partners in another state, that is recognized here in California. I hope I haven't bored you all.
This is
Very,
fascinating.
very informative.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Yeah,
This is fascinating.
very informative.
And I have these code sections here for all of you if you'd
Yes.
like to have this after the meeting.
Absolutely, we definitely need to get our hands on those codes. Comments?
I would like to say, first of all, the presentation was outstanding, clarified, I think, a lot in my mind. And I think those will have to be our guidelines because they're the state and city laws. So I think that was outstanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeremy, question. As we're putting together our thoughts, we will simplify the language and put it forward. This is something that we are, as commissioners, going to share with you, right? And you're collating all of the input.
That is correct. So I'll take the feedback from the commission and put it into a revised code language to work with the city attorney's office. Just want to remind the commission that in one of our earlier conversations, we sort of took the approach that current state law provides many more rights. So we struck out most of the language in the current ordinance and replaced it with the current family code. But the council was a little uncomfortable saying, hey, folks, let's look at what's going on in the world. What happens if something were to change, those rights were taken away? How do we recognize some of these previous rights? How do we recognize how progressive we were back prior to the adoption of the law? So I think that's where this group is sort of tasked today, is figuring out, one, how do we recognize the progressiveness of the city? And also, how do we ensure that rights are protected into the future?
Now, as I understand it, the California family law preempts what we have, but the city ordinances can be more broader, or not more specific, but more broader. Is that right? And it seems like, and how are we protecting against what might happen in the future for the state of California? Is that what the concern is?
That's correct.
If California, if the state would change its law or cancel the whole domestic partnership, we would have something on file that would be able to protect our residents with domestic partnerships.
It's my understanding that's what council was asking this commission to do.
Any other comments?
Well, I think we need to stick with what the laws say, first of all, because that's what we have to abide by. But I'm not sure how much we can protect if something happens within the administration and they come down on partnership laws, how we as a commission can make that different. I mean, that would have to be laws involved, I believe. I'm not sure how we can do it. It's, we don't know what's gonna be happening in the future and we need to stick by that and then hope for the best almost. Go ahead.
So first of all, thank you. It was actually very informative and very clear, so I appreciate that. So are we saying, I think what I'm hearing is we want to create safeguards that if something happens, we have it on file that can put forth that we have these protections for our citizens within the city of Palm Springs.
Yeah, that's my understanding, absolutely.
Okay.
I think you've really captured it there.
Okay, and so what we need to do is figure out is council looking for us to figure out like the verbiage of it and the intimate detail of what we're covering, or is that a more broad?
I think if this group can come up with the concepts, I can then take the concepts and the desires of the commission to put it into the proper verbiage. I'll bring it back here to vet it with this group, and then we'll take it on to the council for approval. And we'll work with the city clerk's office. There'll be public hearing, first reading, second reading, adoption. So we'll go through the logistics of it.
I forget my ignorance on this question, but is it possible to say something like, we adhere to the laws that were in place present to this date, and we still honor those? Is that sort of the gist of what we're going to say in a more elegant way?
In my mind, yes, but I'm gonna ask if she may have a little bit of input on the possibility of trigger type law.
And there's nothing I can say to that right now without giving you guys proper research.
Got it. Thank you.
And again, I can reach out to Jeff, our city attorney, and ask some questions about that as well. If I understand correctly, what you're talking about is something that recognizes the current law, but sort of points back to where we were with prior language if something were to change so that protections are still in effect.
Yeah, almost like a stopgap. Yeah.
Yeah, because my mind is all about protections. It really is. Obviously following the law. And simplifying the language so that it's easily understood for those who will pursue, submitting an application. My first inclination was that maybe a whole lot of people didn't even know that we still have domestic partnerships as an option. And a lot of folks might have thought that, it's same-sex marriage now is the law of the land. But having this and this particular work that we're gonna do it's within the educational piece of the commission. To let people know that domestic partnerships are still very much alive and available.
I'm just a little puzzled as to the language here compared to the language of the law. I guess we need legal input to be able to really compare the two. Because it seems like there's a lot here on domestic partnership. It's unclear to me to see how that needs to be revised. Maybe our legal associates could help us with that. Is that what you're thinking, Jeremy?
In a way, but what I'm hoping to get is some input from this body, so then I could then work with the city attorney's office to craft some language.
Okay.
And if I could note for all of your review, in your current ordinance, you do have a statement that says, whereas the city council intends that this ordinance be interpreted to be consistent with the Domestic Partnership Act of 1999, Family Code Section 297. So that's where some focus could be.
Just as a point of information, I think I remember there were about 80 domestic partnerships in Palm Springs.
I'll ask the city clerk, she might have the information of current number of registrants.
So we currently have 203 registered domestic partnerships. We have 32 that have completed terminations. Last 5 years, we've only had 4 people to apply. We kind of encourage them to go through the Secretary of State because they do hold more teeth than what we have here local. So we don't really have a lot of folks. When they do come in, suggest, hey, here's the limitations, here's where we are. If you want a broader, or more protection, we suggest the Secretary of State's website for it.
So is it recommended that if you register with the city of Palm Springs as a domestic partnership, that you should also register with the state?
We encourage that they register with the state because it does carry more weight. But we don't discourage if someone wants to just register here. We do go through and just kind of highlight what we have here locally. Compared to what they have at the Secretary of State's office, and given the Q&A, they have a frequently asked questions page that kind of go down and explain everything of what the benefits are, what the advantages are, and how to how to apply and submit your fees and so forth. So, but we, like I said, in the last 5 years, we've only had 4 people that actually registered locally.
And correct me if I'm wrong, at the moment, people cannot apply online. There's no mechanism for applying online here in the city.
We don't have a mechanism here to apply online. The Secretary of State, you can fill out the application, but it requires a wet signature, and so they will accept it via mail, but you can't electronically submit your signatures. That's not allowed in either place.
So that people don't have to appear in person to register, they can do it through the
They
mail.
can do it through the mail with a notarized. There's a part to that application that asks for a notary that notarizes that it was actually you that signed that document. And both of you have to, be notarized in order to send. You can send the fee in via, in some instances, it's via check, money orders are mostly, if you show up in person, they do accept cash in some, locations or whatever, but the Secretary of State page pretty much lays out, how to do it, but electronic signatures are not allowed. So even if we put it online, they would still need to come in, or mail. We need a wet signature for those.
And a shout out to Brenda's office. Since she got here, she has made sure that every single person in her office is a notary. So there are plenty of notaries in this city, within the city clerk's office. You can show up, I believe, without an appointment and have something notarized at any time.
Wow. Is there a charge for that?
No, we don't.
Oh, wow.
No, we don't. We have 5.
That's really good to know.
Yep.
For the public as well. You heard it here.
I could have saved a lot of money, all the stuff I've notarized.
Malachi, you have any thoughts?
No, I didn't. I feel like I'm learning a lot because I learned a lot about the code, and I was gonna ask if I could get that digitally because I don't see it on my end.
I'll gather all the information and send it out to the entire commission.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment. I'm just looking at California Code 297, and the language there, as well as 299.6, is much simpler and much smoother than what we have in the municipal code. So I think that's an opportunity for improvement.
I think I'm hearing with Commissioner Nevins what you've brought forward with sort of a stopgap measure, simplifying the language, putting in a stopgap measure that may solve our problems. And I'm happy to take that on and work with the city attorney's office so that I could perhaps bring something back at our July meeting. If that's the case, we could hopefully review it, approve it here. Council's dark in August, so it would be going back to a September city council meeting.
Correct.
To try and finally get this wrapped up. This project's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
It'll be nice to bring some finality to it.
Yeah. As a reminder, we don't have a meeting in August.
You what?
We, as a commission, we don't meet in August.
Oh,
Yeah. We all boards and commissions.
I have a question. Is it possible to accept the state's definition of domestic partnership and then add our additional options as a city onto that? Because the state is so clear with what they're saying and it's legal. And then can we then add ours onto it and whatever isn't already covered in the state?
So that's my interpretation of the code, is essentially the ability to broaden it if desired. But that's where we'd have to research with our city attorney, just as to the actual formal recommendation on how you could write that up.
Terrific.
So if we're comfortable with that, I think I have sufficient direction from this body to kind of carry my piece forward.
Yes.
Sorry, one more question, just on the educational aspect. Does the city prefer that we also say that people should probably go to the Secretary of State and do it there instead of coming to the city because of the weight of it?
It does, like I said, it does offer a wider, the list is, and it's easier, it is online. They can mail it in, once they fill out the application and have it notarized, they can put that in the mail, and it does carry, I think. It has a little more strength than what we have.
If you go online with the state, does the city of Palm Springs notify that this has been done? Or is that something that you would have to let the city know you've
Yeah,
done?
the state actually carries that registry. We have a local law that we keep, which is permanent, of registered that are registered locally. We keep that, but the state has one as well. They keep theirs, they maintain their law.
Great. So Jeremy, if you can carry that forward, that would be awesome. Appreciate it very much. Any additional comments on this item? Having heard none, we're going to move on to continued calendar planning for 2025. Thank you so much, very much
Thank
for
you.
being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Awesome.
So calendar planning for 2025, as I mentioned, next month is July, and it's going to be our regular meeting. We actually do have a meeting on the 17th with the boards and commissions, the joint meeting with city council. But July is going to be our previous meeting before we go dark as commission. August, there's no meetings whatsoever. Yes.
I'm doing a lot of talking today, but in our master calendar, I wanted to bring up that previously we had asked for a presentation on homelessness from Roman Reese, and I reached out to him, and he'll be coming to our July meeting.
Great.
We also have Equity California coming to the July meeting, and Vice Chair Vignolo will be giving an update or kind of summary of World Pride that he went to just last week.
Awesome. The only other update is that I reached out to Lambda Legal and I have not heard back from them yet. Because I thought that might be a good presentation.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll keep everyone updated on that as soon as I hear from them. But anyone, can basically make a suggestion about which other organization, local, state, national, we might want to consider including in our listening sessions and presentations.
Have we ever had Well in the Desert here?
Well, in the desert, no, we haven't.
That's such a big homeless feeding organization. That's a possibility. Have we had the animal shelter here? That could be a good presentation. Have we had that before?
No, that'd be great.
I'm on the board there, I can facilitate that. They'll probably make me give the presentation, but
They'll
sure.
probably have you do that.
So here's a question, can we have the Pride organization, I guess, do a presentation, how they have their breakfast and we participate. Do we want to know how they're structured and what they do, that kind of thing, to acquaint us?
It's open to making that suggestion and reaching out to the principals of the organization and extend the invitation essentially.
Yeah, okay, I mean, yeah, just a suggestion.
Yeah, that might be good leading into November since we do our Pride in November.
Pride is November.
It's November, so it'd be great, have them come in and maybe just tell us how it's going and sort of the obstacles. I know a lot of prides are facing with loss of support from organizations and companies and things like that. So that would be good to hear.
I think it will be great. Now, you are in close contact with Ron and other people in
I'm
private.
not, I mean, we say hello. I mean, I love Ron. I mean, but when I'm not attached to the hip. with
Yeah,
Ron,
exactly.
so-
Because it's like extending an invitation to the mayor.
For PS Pride, I can certainly reach out and see if we can get a representative from your organization to come to a meeting closer to November.
Mhm.
I'm hearing consensus from the group that that's
Mhm.
something we'd like to hear, so I'm happy to take that on.
Cool.
Yeah.
And may I make one other recommendation, being that Malachi is physically challenged, is there a group that possibly could come do a presentation to us that would involve our physically challenged community?
I don't know of anything locally, but what comes to mind is like Disability Rights California, and things like that. And I know, even I've done my own research, so it would be nice to know like more of what they do and maybe just having the education for members that we have here that maybe aren't as visible as far as disabilities, because I think it comes in all forms. So Disability Rights California might be good. I was also thinking about, I don't know if we've ever done, is it Martha's Village with the homeless? That would be a good presentation.
Very, thank you so much.
Thank you, Malachi. So,
Yes.
we could have the well in the desert and Martha's Village kind of give us a presentation on the same day.
I have a question. The Masons, the Shriners here, I mean, I see that they have a hall down on Caballero. Are they involved in, because I know my dad was a Mason, in hospitals for kids that are handicapped and stuff, they raise money for children. I don't know if their chapter is active here in Palm Springs, but it'd be interesting to know if they have a presence.
Would that be kind of like a Shriners?
The Shriners, yeah. My dad was a Shriner, so I grew up with going to the hospitals, seeing, what their work was.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking down the line, maybe, I don't know who to contact, but we can find out.
And we can find out who the main contacts are.
Yeah, there's also, there's a doctor's group that, staffs a free clinic, and I'm blocking on the name, but that might be a group as well.
Is that Doctors Without Borders?
No. It's something local here in Palm Springs. I think, Dr. Les Vendel and,
Oh, yes, Les would know.
yeah, he's a leader of that. I can try to make that connection.
Would you try to make that connection, please?
Yeah.
That would be awesome. And so, as you can see, all these ideas can really help us have lots of presentations from now until the end of the year. And it's important for us to just keep that in mind because we didn't have presentations today, but we had a very engaging discussion. So that's what I would say.
Sorry, one further comment from me. Was supposed to be scheduled today was a further conversation on the community service awards, but because we had such a robust agenda already, I talked with the chair and we're gonna have that on the next agenda as well.
In July.
So I met with Commissioners Rinky and Horn. We did some further revision of the community service award guidelines. We'll be able to bring that back to the July meeting as
Perfect.
well.
And that will be included in our agenda packet.
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. Looking forward to the work that you guys have come up with.
Jeremy has contributed quite.
That's awesome. That's great.
Jeremy's been busy.
Yeah. That's great. So what else is gonna happen in July? Just as a reminder to every single one of our commissioners, including our newest members of the commission, is that we have scheduled elections. So we are inviting everyone, I'm personally inviting everyone who has an interest in the chair position and the vice chair position to prepare your remarks. We're gonna have presentations and then we're gonna take a vote. So we keep this very democratic and we do this every year. Okay? So if
Can
you
you
are
get
inclined,
reelected? No. Yes,
Go well, I'll keep you posted.
yeah, let me know. I mean, you know, I don't know.
I am going to
Oh, good.
bring
Okay.
remarks to
Okay.
continue as chair. But having said that, each and every one of you has the ability to say, I want to put my name on the hat, right? I want to raise my hand and step up. And just prepare remarks so that we can all hear your remarks,
This is for chair and vice chair.
chair and vice chair. And then we keep it very democratic. We take a vote. You can only vote once for one position and once for the other position. So, yeah, keep that in mind, because that's gonna be important for us to accomplish in July.
Term limits,
Every year, we do this every year.
okay, but any term limits for the current standing chair and vice chair?
We have our,
I mean, how many?
I found no term
No
limit.
term.
okay. So none. Fantastic. Am I missing anything, Jeremy, for July?
I think we're good.
We're good, right? Well, I don't have anything else to add, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
May I just say one thing before we do that?
Uh-huh.
Today's meeting has been very productive and very interesting for me. And I hope for everybody else. I learned so much from it, the groups and from the lawyers and everything. I think it was a very, very productive meeting.
Thank you, Commissioners. So, Jeff, very good. All right, so motion to adjourn,
Move from adjourn.
Brinke, second,
I second.
okay, Primus and Horn. So let's just take a vote and adjourn. The commission will adjourn to a special joint meeting with the city council scheduled on Tuesday, June the 17th. Remember, that takes place at the convention center. And then our regular meeting scheduled for Monday, July the 14th, will be 5. So this meeting has been adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Malachi.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Welcome.
Thanks, Malachi.
Bye,
Nice to meet you.
Malachi.
Alrighty, bye bye.